Hello, and welcome everyone to already the fifth iX3 event, where already, as usual, we meet to the three WSA winners to hear their stories about how insight has inspired them to act, to create impact, all through using digital technology. I would say that the key goals of iX3 events are: one, to meet the founders and business leaders who are tirelessly striving to achieve UN Sustainable Development Goals and get inspired by their work and their insights. And two, very much importantly as well, to understand that context that has led them to actually take action and create impact. And today I am honored to be joined by three WSA winners from government and citizen engagement category to talk about how their work is sustaining, enabling, preserving, and helping democracies to thrive in their own countries. All three very young democracies. And as somebody who was born in the Soviet occupation, I still remember standing in line for bread, or that, getting bananas was such a huge celebration at our home while I was a kid. I can say that I'm super grateful that I am living in Lithuania, which is a young, but I would say established democracy, where human rights are really well preserved, where we have digitization of government that is somewhat transparent and really trustworthy. But we know that that's not all the case around the globe with democracy, especially these days, because in some places, democracy has mutated from its original ideology. In other places, it's being challenged and questioned because of all the social and other challenges that the world is undergoing in the late 2010s and especially 2020s. So with 97 countries in the world actually heading to the election this year, it is very important to start talking and shining more light on democracy. And without further ado, I want to invite Ieva from Mano Seimas in Lithuanian, or my parliament in English, which represents weirdly the oldest democracy on today's event, Lithuania, that gained independence in 1992, to tell us more about your work and how do you contribute to democracy. Ieva, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adeta, and hello, everyone. So I represent an organization called Transparency International Lithuania, which is a non-for-profit, non-governmental organization. And for a long time, for about 20 years, one of the most important strategic goals that we had has been to strengthen political integrity in Lithuania. And actually, one of the key tools in achieving this has also been our initiative called Mano Seimas, or in English, it means my parliament. And I have been leading this initiative for the past 5 years, and actually very happy to be here and share more about our successes as well as challenges that we had to endure along the way. But before diving into the details of this online democracy tool, I believe it is very much crucial to set the scene and explain a little bit how come we decided to build this tool and how come it is now very much used not only by politicians, but also by journalists and citizens in Lithuania. So Lithuania, you heard a little bit about it from Odeta, so I will add that it's a very small country with less than 3 million people. And I would say that Lithuania has always been at the forefront of efforts to combat corruption and promote transparency, particularly through various anti-corruption laws. More specifically, in the area of political integrity, I would say that we were amongst the first countries in the world to establish a law on lobbying activities over 20 years ago. And this law, why I want to talk about it, was particularly important because its aim was to provide the public, the citizens, with insights into who is lobbying who, about what, and in general, to better understand how decisions are being made in Lithuania, in the parliament, in the government. So on paper, it looked as a very significant advancement to sort of open up decision-making processes. However, as probably many of us have learned throughout the years, the true value of laws lies in their enforcement, and Lithuania was no exception in this case. The law and lobbying activities wasn't achieving the desired impact, and lobbying activities were underreported. It was very difficult to understand who's actually trying to influence policy making in the parliament and in other national institutions and authorities. And also in Lithuania, we have this representative survey called Lithuania's Map of Corruption, and it has also been running for several decades now. And looking at that map, which is sort of a representative survey, we also have been seeing that about half of people in Lithuania thought that decision-making processes are closed, and they cannot get involved or cannot understand very well what is happening in terms of one or another law. Thus, having this as a context, several years ago, we decided to take a closer look at it. And one of the ways was to actually look at the agendas, working calendars of our parliamentarians. Working calendars were not a part of the law and lobbying activities, thus we thought it could be a good source to understand. So with who our main politicians are actually meeting, and what kind of questions they are discussing. So at first, everything looked very much manual. Me together with some colleagues, we were just diving into the internet and just picking manually, copy pasting into the Excel file, any meetings that we found reported by parliamentarians. And we were just trying to make sense of it, whether it's business associations that are meeting the most with politicians, whether it's non-governmental organizations, trade unions, or any other interest groups. So at first, I have to admit that the results were pretty surprising. We discovered a concerning lack of transparency. Only 4 out of 10 members of the parliament, on average, had publicly available working calendars. And of those that did so, only a third reported meetings with interest groups and lobbyists. And this actually raised several very important questions that we aimed to answer further. So one of the questions was, how were our parliamentarians making decisions without consulting NGOs, associations, or other groups? And were those meetings actually not happening, or they were happening, but nobody wanted to declare them? So it kind of became clear that while we had a legal framework, transparency and accountability was lagging. And to address this, we proposed 2 key ideas to our politicians, saying that actually ethical and transparent lobbying can be a positive force in policy making. And second, that a good politician is one who is active, accountable, and transparent. So to prove sort of those points and to encourage politicians to be more transparent, to be more active, we continued calculating their meetings from the agendas every half a year. We sent them emails encouraging to be more accountable, but at the same time sort of became a huge burden for us to do it manually and very consistently, because we are a non-for-profit organization. We also have to fundraise money in order to do it, to be able to continue with those efforts. So of course, we started thinking about how to digitalize those processes. And this is like, to support those ideas, we developed Mano Seimas, my parliament platform. And this kind of helped us not only to collect data easier, to show some rankings of politicians, but also we started putting there another data very important for decision-making processes in Lithuania. So for example, we uploaded data on long-term permits, who has the access to the parliament. We analyzed data there on committees meetings as well. So it became kind of this source of information around decision-making processes. And I think the key of it was not only showing data and being able to rank politicians, who is the most transparent one, rank political groups, but also it became very crucial in our data-driven advocacy efforts. It allowed us to have a more measured conversation with politicians, with facts. So for example, from that data, we learned that, for example, the code of administrative offenses was discussed 200 times, while the law on environmental protection was addressed only 30 times during the last parliamentary term. And this sort of disparity highlighted the need for more balanced attention to various issues. And we also were discovering many interesting insights because of the platform. For example, we saw that those politicians who were the most active in proposing amendments to laws were not meeting with any interest groups or just one or two per term, which also raised very good questions. How come is this happening? So essentially, this platform helped us to reach out to politicians. We started going to the parliament, presenting the platform, presenting the data, and it helped us to engage with them and to advocate for several things. So one of those, to open parliament's data and open data, because while working with the data, we saw that the quality is very bad. So we were already talking how to improve this, and actually we had very progressive and forward-thinking politicians who opened Parliament's data in open data format. And back then it was one of the most open parliaments. Now I know that there are more parliaments opening up their data in such format, but back then it was really a very good case example. It also allowed us to talk a little bit more about the law and lobbying activities that previously was not working. And the data that we collected, we actually used also to explain that we are not capturing lobbying activities very well in Lithuania. And a couple of years ago, our insights also supported the amendments to the law on lobbying activities. And now we have a very unique law. Both lobbyists and those being lobbied, for example, politicians, are required to report their activities. And we have this sort of cross declaration where we can see whether both parties reported their interactions. So going towards the end of what I wanted to say, I think we learned a very important lesson that data and digital tools should be more than just numbers on a screen or interactive features online, that they must be designed to drive meaningful change. And building effective tools for democracy requires more than just a technology, but also very important to have advocacy planning, identifying key stakeholders, and understanding the engagement strategies. So I think that even, especially in today's age of artificial intelligence and digital innovations, there are several key critical questions that we should always be asking ourselves. Why do we need this technology? How can it help us to achieve the change that we seek? And is it actually truly the best tool for the job? And I think once we have this in mind, we can build really good tools. And just to end, and I'm sure they will have more time to talk about it, now other chapters from Transparency International in other countries, they are also developing similar platforms to enhance democracy and transparency. And if you are interested, maybe it's a platform is in your country, who knows, you can just Google Integrity Watch and find whether it's there. I really invite you to visit those, because they are also analyzing data not only on lobbying, but also asset declaration, interest declarations, public procurement, and it actually really helps to strengthen democracy in various countries. Thank you. I see
Thanks,
that
Vera.
on
Tick, 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 you know, we will not have a lot of time for discussion. But I see that Fozudin is not here yet, so maybe we will have that extra time. But thanks, Yava, for, you know, so well explaining such a complex topic in such a great detail that I think that it's really clear to the listeners of like how the context, but also how the platform operates and influences decisions. I would love to ask Gabriella to come on stage. Gabriella from South Africa, which is a bit younger democracy from 1994. Please, Gabriella, share your work at OpenUp and how you are contributing to democracy.
Thank you so much. Very happy to. Just to make sure that people can see my screen, it'll just help me focus. Perfect. Okay, hi everyone. I'll be introducing to you a little bit about how OpenUp digitally empowers democracy. But in order to tell you that story, I should first tell you this story, which is the story about how we founded it, just to explain a little bit about how we address these things with innovation. So in about 2012, my co-founder, Adi Yel, who was a data scientist, and myself, Gabriella Razzano, who was a transparency lawyer, met each other at an Open Knowledge Foundation meeting in Cape Town. And we had a shared love of data and a shared love of innovation and a shared love of all things South African. But both of us being him embedded in the data space and me embedded in the human rights and civil society space, what we saw was, while there were these amazing advancements in data and innovation for addressing all kinds of needs in other spheres, and while there was this amazing, vibrant community of people working on democracy and advancing in democracy in South Africa, there was not an overlap between these two spheres of work. And so in order to try and, you know, bring these two things together, Adi and I co-founded what is the first open data-driven social impact technology nonprofit in South Africa, OpenUp. But, you know, just to understand the context in which OpenUp tries to work, South Africa is a country of significant social and income inequality and significantly high poverty rates, significantly high unemployment rates, in spite of, you know, I think, very thriving democratic institutions, and like we said, a young democracy. And, you know, you see a very low levels of participation by the public in formal institutions of democracy. So we have low national elections turnout, and low levels of trust and participation in parliament. And those sort of formal institutions remain very alien to people. Importantly, too, it's not just that people don't trust these institutions. They also don't feel that they know and have enough information and know enough to be able to participate in these institutions. Although people do feel comfortable participating in local and community levels of engagement. And, you know, when we think about what that means for trying to create a thriving South African democracy, we understand that this means we need to provide more data, relevant data and information that's more easily accessible so that people feel better informed. We need to help impart digital and innovation skills, but also try and create participation systems that are simple and efficient so that people feel empowered. And then in order to activate people into participating in democracy from both the government and the civil society side, we need to, you know, help build trust in institutions, help build responsiveness in institutions, and help build accountability mechanisms. And so, you know, a lot of our interventions try to meet all these different kinds of needs. But to move into the specifics of how we do things, this is our mission, but we've essentially created South Africa's open data infrastructure. If there's an open data project in South Africa, it's likely that OpenUp have been involved in some level. We've made available through a partnership with National Treasury, both national financial data in Vulekamali and municipal level financial data in Mooney Money. And there's several other open data driven projects that are listed there that you can have a look through to see how we've done that. And then we tend to also empower civil society groups through collaboration. This year, obviously, was a big election in South Africa, a great election in my feeling, because it was peaceful transition to a really interesting coalition government, which we all call the new, or the GNU, or the Government of National Unity. Together with the South African National Editors Forum, OpenUp made, you know, not only all the elections data available, but we put this on a tool that we call WSA, which is our own GIS information tooling, and allows you to analyze all that elections data against relevant census data, relevant demographic data, even relevant information like police stations and point data, like you see here. And that was available to empower journalists. And we did that through, you know, several kinds of training. So this isn't really about elections results. This is about creating a capacitated newsroom who really know how to report in detail on the realities of the elections, given our inequality context. Another project we have been doing this year was Civicus, is helping to co-create a financial and non-financial resource pool to empower sub-Saharan African digital democracy defenders. To do this, we've been, you know, creating the structure to help, you know, capacitate around 120 organizations within this ecosystem, which we should begin rolling out with them next year. So another thing that we do, in other words, is to provide data and innovation skills to people already active in the democracy field. A final project I thought I'd reflect on quickly is our own collaboration with Parliament. So all parliamentary information is made available through a civil society group called the Parliamentary Monitoring Group. And we've created the PMG's website with them, as well as their other website, People's Assembly, which tracks relevant parliamentary official information. And this is the key way that most researchers, most South Africans, and most MPs actually receive parliamentary information in South Africa. It's got over 4 million users in an average year. It's got over 200,000 open records. And to be honest, it's one of the, you know, few sources of openly available big data sets, actually, that we currently have. And we're doing lots of different exciting kinds of collaborations with PMG on using that data, providing, you know, new creative ways to empower South African citizens to participate in government directly through Parliament. So that's just a high-level introduction to some of the things we do. We obviously have quite a big portfolio of projects, you know, if you can imagine, because we do that kind of facilitating role. And you can actually explore our impact catalog on that QR code if you want to have a look at some of our projects, or, you know, I'm always available on email. So thank you.
Thank you, Gabriella. Also a very comprehensive and well-versed explanation of what OpenUp does and the impact that you're creating in South Africa. And I hear a lot like, you know, open data being the key element for both Yeva and Monosemas and what you do at OpenUp. Without further ado, I would love to invite Fawzideen to share his story and his impact through Zamtraka that he is striving to achieve in a new democracy. Nigeria has gained independence only in 1999, so the youngest democracy here on this event today. Fawzideen, would you like to share your screen and come on stage? You can switch on your camera as well. Great, we can see you. If you just unmute, then the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fawzuddin Mahmoud, and I am from Nigeria. I love the introduction that Odeta made, that we are the youngest democracy. Yeah, we just celebrated, I think, 2 decades of unbridled democracy, right from 1999 to date. So I'm from Nigeria, and in Nigeria, from a state in the northwestern part of the country called Zamfara State. Actually, the poorest region in the country. Poverty rate is at a staggering 78%. So that means that amongst like each 100 people, 78% of among every 100 people, 78 out of them live below the poverty line. In a recent report that was published by One Africa, they actually did an analysis of the primary healthcare service delivery in states, in the 36 states in the country. And, the state I am from actually came last. And also unemployment rate is at, 44%. So why am I saying this? I'm bringing all these figures just so that I can give you like a socioeconomic context of the place that I come from. So now all these problems are actually symptoms to a particular issue with governance and with democracy. That means something is actually wrong with the issue of governance, the system of governance, weak institutions that have not been able to deliver on the public good. So now I grew up in this kind of environment where all these socioeconomic realities are obtained. So now the question is, okay, who is now responsible to address these problems? Who's now going to work on these issues? Because definitely someone needs to address these issues. If not, the whole system will implode, and then that will be catastrophic, for democracy. And I said to myself, okay, what is the way forward? How can we actually make sure that we open up democracy, we link people with governance and with government, so that that interaction will lead to improved service delivery for virtually everybody. So it is this particular line of thought that actually gave birth to what we do at Zamtraka. So if I may just give you a brief of that. Zamtraka is a civic tech platform that leverages on data and technology to be able to empower people with the basic information they need, specifically around fiscal issues, fiscal data that they need to be able to get engaged. It is our belief that apart from the Constitution, the second most important public document is, the fiscal budget, because it gives you like the detailed information on the focus of government for that particular fiscal year. And it's a very, very viable tool for people to get engaged and people to ask all the right questions as to the direction of government, because what is entailed in the fiscal data and the fiscal document directly and indirectly affects them. So we leverage on data, but then you need to create you need to also source out the data. So how do we now source out data? In a particular environment where there's no transparency, no fiscal transparency, no accountability, and all these negative socioeconomic realities are obtained, then definitely the first building block towards building a more accountable democracy is for you to start with entrenching transparency. So back then in 2019/2020, we launched the Open Budget campaign, which is like a fiscal transparency campaign to ensure that the government actually publishes its fiscal data online. And this particular engagement was really positive, and it led to the government actually subscribing to the OGP local, the Open Government Partnership. And through this particular, with this success that we were able to get, we were able to ensure that on an annual basis, all fiscal data, including the fiscal budget, budget performance reports, they are all published online. But then that is one part of the problem, because, okay, if you have it online and then you have a society that is actually poor, more than 80% of the population actually live in rural and semi-urban areas, and literacy rate is at 19%. So now who is there to really understand that fiscal data, if not for the privileged few? So now we need to actually make sure that, okay, the opportunity that we have, that the government actually is now publishing the fiscal data, we now need to ensure that we intersect people with that bit of information. And in order for us to bridge that that challenge of lack of literacy and what have you, and that's where technology actually comes in. So we use technology, using tech tools, to break down that fiscal data into meaningful bits of interactive information using the local language, because it's very essential in a place where literacy rate is so poor. You don't get people speaking English that much. So we adopted the local language and also intersected it with technology, just such that through that people are much more informed on, okay, how much is the government getting, how much is it spending, on what is the government spending, what's the debt service, and also what's the overall debt burden of the state, and what have you. Data such as that really goes a long way in giving people the opportunity to actually ask all the right questions. So now through this, how do we then strengthen democracy through this? For us, democracy is all about people. Governance has to translate to improving socioeconomic profiles of people, most especially people that are marginalized. And that is why empowering people with these kind of critical data is very vital. So we do what we do so that we can intersect people with government. We can bridge that divide between people and government, and through that we are actually improving the virtues of democracy, which are transparency, accountability, and economic prosperity. And in order for us to augment this particular aspect, we actually created a separate project, or let me say a separate unit called the PTU. And this PTU is like the project tracking component of our work, such that, okay, we give people information on, okay, this is what the government is spending, these are the projects that, are on the menu for the particular year. But then who knows whether those projects are implemented or not? If they're implemented, what's the quality of implementation? Are they abandoned? And then what about sustainability? Who then take care of the project, after, they're implemented? So now it is the work of this internal unit to, go in real time, go to the field, map out locations, locate those project sites, and also get critical data in terms of, project completion rates, the pace that the work is, currently been going, the quality of the work that's been done, and also to make analysis on, okay, is the amount that's been budgeted or that's been expended for this particular project commensurate with the quality of work that's on ground. There were instances where 200 million naira or thereabout, will be budgeted to build a particular school, a particular bridge. But when you go there and you see the quality of work, you wouldn't even think that 10 million naira is spent on that particular project. So all these, we report on them, we track, we monitor those projects, and we use them as another viable tool to keep people engaged, to keep communities informed. And wherever we go, wherever community that we go to track a particular project, we make sure that, we do an in-house sensitization with the community leadership, including the district heads, the local cleric, youth groups, representative of market women, representative of youth, representative of people with disability, so that we first inform them, okay, hey, this is what we are coming here to do. This is why it's important for you to actually engage with, the person who nominated this particular project, or you engage with the ministry directly to ensure that the project is done, or you are engaged in the nomination process in the first place. Most of the times people complain, the communities complain that, okay, people just come and start construction without the community even knowing, okay, this is what's to be constructed. And we believe that that's a very, very critical component, because you need to engage citizens first, know what they need in that particular community, because that will help them in actually owning up the project and ensuring its sustainability. So through these mechanisms, we're empowering people to get engaged with the government, and the more they get engaged, the more the institutions are much more responsive towards providing improved service delivery for all. And why we're so different, if I may say, is the fact that we focus on what happens at the subnational level, because we believe that democracy is local, government is it's local, and the much more people at the grassroots level that are able to empower to intersect with their local governments, the much more stronger the institutions are from the bottom up. So what really happens at the federal level, it's not really what concerns it, but what really happens at the subnational level, at the states level, that is where we are currently targeting. And it's a huge vacuum that we're filling, because we have a lot of big name organizations that they only focus on what happens, at the federal level. But if you go down to the state level, they have no presence, they're not empowering anybody, so we're there to like bridge this particular divide. So basically that is what Zamtracker is all about. And in the run up to the 2023 general election, we just had a general election in 2023. And we launched Voter. So Voter is like this election monitoring tool and voter sensitization platform, where we empower voters with the right electoral data or information on how to be able to make informed decisions, and also to be able to track these projects, to track the votes in real time. So it's the first of its kind in the whole country, because it is providing a narrow focused approach to the issue of election monitoring at the states level. When you cover the whole country, you publish a report, there are critical data, critical information, critical events that are happening at the subnational level that are not being captured, and that is where we are currently focusing. Those critical information that's happening that don't get really elevated to the national level, that's what we're trying to amplify. So through these activities and projects, we're striving to improve democracy by empowering people, by engaging more people and intersecting them with their government. So I think I'm going to drop my screen for if anyone wants to really share their own insights, or if they want to get to know much more about what we do. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Fawzidin. It's like such an incredible story and example of actually bridging online data and citizen participation to actually make a change where there is potentially no infrastructure. So you're just creating it and actually like involving people in doing so. So I would invite everybody to actually switch on their cameras, Yava, Gabriella, Fawzidin, for a brief 20-minute-ish discussion, because I think that, like I heard a lot: poverty, literacy rate, corruption, open data, trailblazer politicians, transparency, and accountability have been mentioned quite a few times by all of you. And you all operate non-governmental institutions, but you are, in an essence, making sure that the government is accountable for its actions through inviting it and actually pushing it almost to open the data and to actually become more transparent. Can you share the biggest challenges and your specific government's, I don't know, like how does the government view you? Like, you know, your efforts and your actions, are they friendly and opening? Are they resistant? Can you share a bit of a light on that regard? And maybe Fawziddin, let's start with you, because you're the youngest democracy, so you probably get, like, you know, a different end of a stick here.
Yeah. So thank you. I think it's a very interesting question. You know, when you're trying to disrupt the status quo, definitely you should plan for ripple effect. You know, a lot of things are bound to happen. Rejection. A lot of people will label you different kind of names. You know, and the government, you know, might even clamp down on what you do. And yeah, you know, we actually experienced that in the early days of our work, you know, not from the government directly, but from their own agents or from their own proponents. But going forward, I think our core values actually helped us to weather the storm, in such a way that, you know, we're able to create this synergy, this cooperation with government, with relevant bodies, so that, you know, together they could see that, okay, we're trying to do something different, even though they don't like it, but then the people are behind us because we've been able to create this base through that campaign that we launched, the Open Budget campaign. So we're able to mobilize a lot of people, and then it became very, very difficult for the government line to say, okay, we're just going to shut these people down. You know, we've gathered that momentum and use that momentum to as a pedestal to engage with the system, you know, so that we on one hand we are with the people, and on the other hand we're there trying to make sure that, you know, we engage relevant stakeholders to, you know, address the system. So if you marry the two together, the effect becomes much more pronounced.
Mm-hmm. So employing people and kind of not leaving any other way, really. That's the way forward in Nigeria. What about Gabriella? What was your journey in pushing through with open data and actually getting the government on board with it or against it? But what's that element of the journey?
No, I mean, we've traditionally had a very collaborative relationship with government across spheres of government, so at national, provincial, and local government level. And I think it's for a couple of reasons, one of them being we're quite agnostic, you know, and it's about delivering on a shared goal and making sure that those goals align, you know, and aligning incentives with partners is a very important strategic element of doing it. But, you know, our open budget portal at municipal and local government is a direct partnership actually funded for by national government, you know, and there are often different political incentives in play in making information transparent, you know, and sometimes being strategic in thinking about whose needs can be met in these processes is important. And I mean, I think about something like Muni Money, which is a municipal finance data portal. And that our API is accessed by some of the banks because the banks use it to do credit risking on municipalities and local government for financing. So, you know, there are direct incentives for municipalities to make the best information, you know, best quality information available, because otherwise, you know, they're just excluded from those kinds of systems as well. So, you know, it's sometimes a complicated dance, yeah, but often because we're a facilitator, it's often our partners who are, you know, at the forefront of the political contestations. And, you know, there's still in both civil society and government quite a lack of data and digital capacity, that these partners are always very open to collaborating just to meet that need. And that's where we come in.
You mentioned incentives for institutions to kind of like also join and have these platforms. do these incentives come from government direct, or it's more just a whole policy that is present in South Africa that now kind of like pushes through institutions, through incentive mechanisms to open data, to join the digital transparency platforms?
I mean, I'm going to give the lawyer's answer, which is it depends, you know, it really depends on the project. But yeah, you know, there are, so for instance, Mooney Money and Vulekamali very similarly have a part of the strategy for policy and creating policy incentives there. Those were both open government OGP projects, and that's been very useful as a kind of like incentive leverage, you know, to drive those projects. But, you know, sometimes like we've done a project with a local municipality on creating open business information. Because at the local level, surprisingly, I mean, it's something you wouldn't think was difficult to get access to, but like, you know, up-to-date consolidated information about local businesses is very difficult for them to centralize and generate. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. It's a Yellow Pages problem. I don't know if you guys know, back in the day, that's what the Yellow Pages was for. But in that situation, it's really interesting because the municipality is incentivized because we have a lot of policy frameworks around preferential procurement, you know, providing, you know, business to local, right? And the community is incentivized to participate in those data collection activities. It's actually a data collection project because they want to be visible, you know, as a producer for these services. Yeah, aligning incentives is a strategic, it's a
And I guess
strategic,
systematic key component, right?
yeah.
And then, Yava, you mentioned trailblazer politicians that agree to open data from the parliamentary meetings and everything. Can you share a little bit about your journey towards the open data and actually your relationship with politicians and you're enforcing them to, you know, or like even, you know, facilitating new laws to be set?
I think at the beginning, it was, of course, a little bit more difficult, as we've heard from also colleagues, mostly because the area that we chose to work with was lobbying. And lobbying in Lithuania for a long time has been considered as something negative. So when we released a first few rankings of politicians saying that whether they met with lobbyists or not, we were getting calls to the office saying, but I'm not meeting with lobbyists. It's something bad. I don't want to be portrayed like this. So the first thing that we actually had to do, talk a lot about lobbying actually being a good thing if you declare those meetings with lobbyists and if you are transparent about it. And through this sort of conversation, communication with politicians and parliamentarians, we found those transparency champions, if I can say like that, who agreed with our mindset. So we focused on them instead of focusing on those that were saying you are doing not a good analysis, that it's not working and so on. We focused on those that said, yeah, we agree with you. So we continued conversations. We went to political parties, political groups at the parliament. We were invited to present. And this is how we found basically one person who also had IT background, but was a politician. And he got the main idea and he made it happen, basically. So I think a lot of it was also up to being very consistent and going and talking with everyone, not saying that we're not going to talk to one political party or another one, just going and talking with them and finding those champions that support your idea and kind of move forward with it. Because once they do it, others sort of start following because it's somebody from their community, it's somebody from the parliament, from politicians and so on. And one more thing I think that is important to note that we've been building my parliament monosemous through maybe 2 terms of two parliamentary terms. So we were able to kind of compare those 2 terms, and we saw that actually new politicians that get elected for the first time in the parliament, they are actually more active and more open and more transparent. So this is also another thing that worked for us, working with those that are newly elected, because they are just more open to employ those sort of good governance, transparency practices.
So leading by example and really just counting on the ones who actually agree with it. And maybe, Yeva, we can continue with you, because I think like when we were preparing, we had an interesting discussion that, people like politicians, they know that you exist, they know that you are monitoring, and that is already like a governance tool in itself. How important is people's participation? We heard from Fawzedine that, it's people's first, people first. Yava, you're saying that it's politicians first, like the trailblazer politicians. But how important is people within your platform, Yava?
So of course, citizens are very much important, because once we have this sort of data open and public to everyone, anyone can ask questions, anyone. And actually, more and more, we realized that journalists were using it and asking politicians, why did you not declare a meeting? Did you forget, or was it something else? And this is how people sort of started to get involved. But actually, the main target group, were politicians and decision makers in this particular case, because we wanted them to kind of start having those more transparent habits, more accountability, and provide information to citizens. So I think this has worked quite well, this sort of approach, because if we fast forward to now, and to like 1 year ago, actually the parliament itself started publishing our data on their social media, saying that we did this analysis, and they are sharing it. We started having discussions, like, for example, last year, we had first political integrity discussion in the parliament, chaired by the chairperson of the parliament, with various political groups, with lobbyists, with monitoring institutions. And we were actually sitting down after those years in front of one table and discussing what we can do so that our decision-making processes in Lithuania are more open. So we will see how it goes. We have elections this October in Lithuania as well, parliamentary elections. But in general, the tendency has been towards more transparency and more support for accountability.
Open data and open working together. That sounds great. Fawzedine, if I can come back to you, because you started saying that, like your people-driven impact on politicians. Are you seeing any trailblazer politicians that are starting to open up and facilitate and help? Is there also in Nigeria and in your region, those ones that will help you to carry the flag and continue opening the data to more citizens?
Yeah, I wish we can carry this lobbying as a strategy, but in the context of our own political environment, I mean, lobbying would just it's just like a huge downer, because you lose appeal to the other party. So you just need to stay central. So lobbying is not part of our own kind of political space. But then going back to our work, prior to us starting work on following projects and tracking of public projects, lawmakers do not even actually engage their citizens on, okay, I'm going to nominate a project for you. But citizens will just see project, construction commences, and then, at the end of the day, that project will become abandoned. because the community wasn't engaged, so nobody is going to like take ownership for sustainability purposes. But then after we've done the tracking for like 4 years, now lawmakers are beginning to do town halls. Are beginning to do town halls before actually nominating the project, so they're engaging people in the nomination processes at first, and it's all down to the outcome of the reports that we've been publishing based on number of projects in so constituencies that weren't completed, that were abandoned because of lack of sustainability mechanism, or projects that were not even executed at all. So now these lawmakers are trying to engage more with their citizens, engaging them in both the nomination as well as the execution process. So they will engage them. Okay, hey, what are your needs? Let's discuss this problem together, and then they will identify a particular project, and then when it's time for implementation, they'll like do one mini ceremony like that, like an execution ceremony where the district head will be there, the community leaders will be there, and then the contractor too as well. Representatives of the contractor will be there as well. Okay, we are going to start so project in your community, and we're here to notify so critical stakeholders so that what we are doing, and then at the end of the day, together we make sure that the projects are sustainable. So we are seeing this particular change in trend, whereas before we opened up that segment, they just did what they wanted because they knew people really didn't know. So they can either nominate project and then connive to siphon the funds without even implementing the project because people didn't know. So if you don't know anything, you're not going to ask something. But when we started, now people are talking about it. If projects are not even complete, are not even completed, if you see the kind of engagement that we have on our site and on social media, people using our own data that, hey, we're aware that 50% of funding has been released for the implementation of these project. Our lawmaker is yet to commence. What's wrong with you? So all those kind of conversations are really, really, picking up. So I think going forward, if this trend is sustained, we're definitely going to see, new crop of lawmakers, coming up and engaging more with their citizens and also supporting this. So what we intend to do in the long run is for us to like create this co-create this module that will guide nomination of constituency projects or capital projects by lawmakers in a particular year. So that model will like be what would I say, the dictionary or the manual that all the lawmakers are now going to use when they are going to nominate the project. It's not going to happen now, but in the long run, we want to co-create this, with them so that we have one particular guide for project nomination as well as project completion, so that, there is a particular guide, nationwide guide that will guide these events.
I think there is a lot to learn for a lot of countries from you guys and how you are bridging together like politicians and citizens for project completion. I am looking at time, and of course, it's always not enough. We have last 3 minutes, maybe like we can run over a couple. But Gabriella, I wanted to turn this question to you because you mentioned in your presentation that the public participation by citizens is very low, but the community participation is pretty high. And on the other hand, you have open data frameworks, you have apparently institutions that are really incentivized to open up more data and be open and transparent. Maybe like for the end of it, I will ask all of you to share a couple words about like, what do you think is the next key milestone in your projects, achieving, even greater integration of government and transparency in the citizens. But Gabriella, you can maybe start by also just briefly telling about, like, what about that increasing public participation in South Africa? How is that happening? Is that happening? Where is it going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm forever hopeful because it's, there's always opportunity, to improve things. And, you know, already we're about to launch a project because we, you know, and lobbying, it's become a dirty word, but there are lots of ways that civil society, active members of communities can lobby their politicians very constructively for better conditions. And it's just that those spaces are, you know, blocked out by, you know, private interests and political interests. And there are lots of rooms to make those spaces more accessible for people. And digital tooling is one of them. So is, you know, very multi-stakeholder kinds of initiatives, which include bringing together like non-profit actors, but also private sector actors alongside governments. And we've got a couple of those kinds of multi-stakeholder initiatives, you know, in play in a couple of different spheres. So, you know, I think it's also, you know, it's a good year. It's a year that's just kicked off after a successful election, you know, to all accounts. So things are looking very good here. Don't know how everybody else feels.
That's always very positive and welcoming to hear, really. Yeah, what do you think is the next biggest milestone in Lithuanian democracy continuing to thrive and be transparent?
That's a very difficult question, to be honest. Let's see after elections, but I think that the wave that I see with my colleagues from Transparency International, that the wave is going towards more citizen engagement through, for example, participatory budgeting tools, where, you know, citizens can, in the municipalities, decide and suggest their ideas that they want to implement and vote for it. And there are also digital tools involved in it. So I know that some countries are already have already started this like 30 years ago, but I guess in Lithuania it's really picking up now because also schools are doing it. And I think we are thinking more about citizen assemblies. So basically how to make sure that also citizens' voices are heard, and how to use digital technologies to sort of facilitate this process and to make it easier for them to participate in decision making processes. So this is at least the trend that we are seeing in Lithuania in terms of democratic engagement.
And Faustine, for you to end it, of course, you said, you know, like you already mentioned what's the biggest milestone for you for some tracker platform, but what about Nigeria's democracy? Do you have any insight that you would like to share?
Yes, I think even though our democracy is quite nascent, but there are a lot of actors, both public and private, that are working towards ensuring that the basic tenets of democracy, accountability, and transparency are being upheld. And I think going forward, it's really going to be a game changer where you get a lot of people intersected with government. We are 230 million people right now, but if you look at 113 million of them live in poverty, so that really tells you that there's still a lot of work to do in marrying the two together. And it is the little work of initiatives like us, like others, that will definitely be the game-changing component for our democracy, and we are ready for the work. Yeah.
That is super motivating and pleasant to hear, because I think that all of your work really contributes. And of course, like underlying enabler is digital technology. We wouldn't be here today talking about open data and government transparency if it wasn't for digital technologies. That actually, like, even somehow today talking to you guys, I was thinking like, I'm sitting in my room in Lithuania and I am getting a window into Nigeria, South Africa, and a completely different place in Lithuania, which is absolutely amazing, which bridges citizens, politicians, opens up possibilities for us to come together, to become more transparent and more inclusive in decision-making process. And the state of the world where we are right now, there is no other way. There is no other way for people to be aside. Then we have so much access to information, and for politicians to not be inclusive for this. So I really thank you a lot for joining us today, for doing the amazing work that you're doing, for winning WSA competition. And I really hope that I will meet you around in WSA events or just in different forums. And I also really hope that all of you will get connected and can share experiences and learn from each other as well. Just like we invite everybody on YouTube, all the WSA community or any other listener to get in touch. If you found something relevant, if you want to learn more, if you want to stay engaged, please do so. We're all about inclusivity and opening up the knowledge so that everybody can benefit. So without keeping you away from your evenings, all of us are in a very similar time zone, weirdly. I really want to thank you, and I hope I will see you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.